I have to normally introduce myself as his son, and then I get little bit of credibility in the Indian context. So I think that there are many people in this room who obviously it's PUCL, so you have legal experts. So I thought I'll focus a bit more on the kind of social and political questions around today's discussion. And since it's the opening session, I feel that if we don't understand and frame the problem correctly, then our solutions are not going to be adequate or relevant. And we are dealing with a very complex problem. So I think let's spend a few minutes, and I only want to make 2 or 3 points, and then we can. I think the important thing is what action plans come out of here, but you can't get the right action plan if you've not diagnosed the problem correctly. So, normative concepts and ideas like peace and tolerance, equality, non-discrimination, these are the kind of bedrock underlying values on which human rights and democracy are supposedly founded. And there is no society in the world which can say that these have been achieved. They are aspirational by definition. So I think that the question really is as to what is the gap between those aspirational, normative, value-based things and the reality of a given society. How do you bridge that gap is what the whole challenge is. Now, I would submit, that South Asia, of which in a sense you could say India is kind of mothership, because everything has come out from India in the sense that South Asia came out of India in that sense. It's one subcontinent. I would say that, I've spent 25 years of my life traveling to most other parts of the world. I don't think there's any other part of the world where the gap between the aspiration and the rhetoric and reality is bigger than in South Asia. So let's be clear that we can come to what BJP and RSS are doing, but the fact is we have a societal challenge. So we are deeply prejudiced, deeply discriminating, very judgmental. We have, and they're very intersectional. The levels of prejudice we have are also deeply intersectional, because so we don't fundamentally believe in equality. As you know, that the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Article 1 begins by saying that every human being is born free and equal in dignity and rights. Now, in the Indian context, that's nonsense. You're not born free or equal because you're already born into a caste. So once you're born into a caste, it's a system of, as Ambedkar said, it's a system of graded inequality. So it's a descending order of contempt and ascending order of reverence. That is the structure. This structure has been with us for at least 3,000 years. So, we have to kind of start with that grim reality, and that comes from the concept of purity. So that purity means that, if you're an upper caste man, you're pure. Now, anything outside of that frame, you're already at a big disadvantage. And that plays out in a million different ways in our day-to-day life. It's not an abstract concept. And for 3,000 years, people have been fighting against it, and even today we're fighting against it. I'm not suggesting, therefore, that we give up. That fight has to continue. But I'm saying that, if you don't put it in that context, in that frame, that men in this country think they're fundamentally superior to women. And it's a birthright. I mean, that's the way you are. If you're older, you're wiser. If you're upper caste, you're superior. If you're a Hindu, that majority is minority complex, as that you're permanently aggrieved because you're entitled. Everybody else is an outsider, you're an insider. These are the deep things. So when you start finding solutions to this problem, we don't understand that that's our starting point. I think we are not going to make enough progress. So So over the years, I think Najib and others have spoken about reformers. We talk about Savitribai Phule, or we talk about Periyar, or Narayan Guru, or of course Gandhi, Ambedkar. More recently, the country was divided on the basis of religion. Unfortunately, it was then reorganized on the basis of another prejudice, which is language. So we have linguistic superiority. So somebody said translate. Which language are you translating to? I mean, we have 25 languages, at least we can translate into as we speak, right? But the divisions are deep and serious. And yes, the attack predominantly today is against Muslims, but it is against Sikhs. Whenever we saw what happened at the farmers' agitation, then you're called Khalistani. Christians, Manipur, we've seen what's happening in Manipur. You don't have to go back to Father Stan Swami. And the Christians, the immediate thing is that it is conversion. So when you see a Christian individual or family, and I'm sure you've heard all the cases. So I'm just saying that let's broaden the frame from where it's not a narrow thing. It's true that 98.5%, as per the India Hate Lab report, was targeted on Muslims. But the phenomenon is deep, and it cuts across all of these questions that we should keep in mind. Now, if you fast forward to where we are today, because we can go back and talk about Ashoka and Mughals, and the British tried to bring reforms. Everybody has kept trying to do it. But if you fast forward to where we are today in this so-called electoral democracy, so here we have a kind of a design problem, because what has happened is, the very people who designed this system, the caste system, which is also Schadenfreude, the Germans talk about Schadenfreude, which is that the reason why the person, so I've just come back from Bihar, so if you say you're a Pichda, backward, you are getting oppressed by the people on top of you, but you're feeling good because you have somebody else to oppress below you, Ati Pichda. So sab khush hai. Everybody is happy. Everybody has somebody to exploit. The system that's why it survived for 3,000 years. But this electoral democracy which we have ended up with, which obviously is, we believe it's a better system because we're just not smart enough to think of a better one than that. So this has got a design flaw, because what happens now is that since the very upper caste who designed the system have divided the society, in an electoral democracy, how are they going to get power? They cannot bring the caste together unless they attack a non-Hindu. So it's not just BJP and RSS, of course, they represent the most organized and dangerous form. The Sangh Parivar represents that. But their whole design is that we can only get the caste together if you attack Muslims, Christians, or Sikhs. So they cannot get off this tiger. So, there is no way in which they will stop doing this, because they cannot be in power if they stop doing this. So you're stuck in that situation. So either we have to fundamentally change it, or you're stuck with this. Whether they're in power or not, they're going to keep doing this. I think we have to just I'm making these points because as we come up with the solutions, let's keep these things in mind. And yes, they've taken once they came to power and they've captured state power, all the state institutions have been completely compromised. We know that. And they've unleashed repression like we've not seen before. Not just against defenders, of course they're attacking human rights defenders. But if you're a Dalit or a Muslim or Adivasi in a village, even more so if you're a woman, you're in trouble. I mean, it's not a theoretical discussion. On a day-to-day basis, we can, the case study after case study on what's going on in the country is there for us to see. So I think that, I want to just kind of move into the question of where do we go from here? And just one other angle which I wanted to mention before we look at, one or two ideas on how we can proceed with this, is that what is now called transnational repression. So not only are the sort of Sangh Parivar doing what they're doing inside India, but they're also exporting the model. So now we have the diaspora, which has been completely weaponized in different parts of the world. And some of you may be familiar with this Tommy Robinson's anti-immigration rally which happened. It was a massive rally in London last weekend. And I don't know if you're aware, but Tommy Robinson had been invited by the Sangh Parivar to come to India. He was arrested before he traveled here. So we have a situation where this model is not just being used here, but in the Leicester riots in the UK, for example, a legal challenge, but there are much better people than me here to talk about what the legal solutions are, and they're important. And as we did with the anti-lynching laws, I think to bring in private member bills, to create state-wise legislations and move it into something more at the national level is important. But I want to talk less about the legal question, more again about the societal and political side. And I think here, the first thing that people will always tell you is that, but Muslims have to reform themselves, Christians have to reform. Let them do that. That's a good thing. But I think the biggest challenge is within the so-called Hindus, and that if we cannot, I'm born a Hindu, I don't particularly identify myself as one, but if the so-called Hindus are not able to work with their own people, particularly younger people and women, then there is no answer. Because if you take any communal riot or any incident which happens, the upper caste people will provoke it. Mostly upper caste men provoke it. But when you look at who are the victims, who are the people who died, who are the people who are injured, they're always low caste. There's no upper caste person who's going to fight and get killed in a riot. Only lower caste people are fighting that battle in the front line. So if we can't organize our own people, and which is what Ambedkar talked about, educate, organize, agitate, was we don't need to come up with a new set of ideas. But if we don't organize our own people, particularly the low caste, Dalit, Adivasis, and particularly the women and younger people, I don't think we're going to find, because you can reduce the problem through legal solutions, but the answer is to go to the ground and work with our people. There's no shortcut to it, and that has to be converted into political electoral power. It's not just like a lot of the civil society people are doing long-term conscientizing work, which is a good thing. But in today's context, if you can't convert that into electoral, power, then these people are going to rule forever. So I'll stop and thank PUCL for giving us this opportunity.